Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of It Goes Off, and it's exciting times in the NBL and also some disappointment with news that this week Paddy Mills is no longer going to be in the competition, but we've got a huge show ahead of us, and stay tuned for the 24-second shot challenge because rumour has it we might see a new clubhouse leader. As he does every week, it's Grantley Bernard joining me on the program. Grantley, let's get right stuck into the Paddy Mills issue because it's, in one respect, very sad times that we no longer have a superstar like Paddy Mills in the competition, off to play in China. Yeah, look, it's one that came out of the blue. Basically lobbed in Friday, Saturday. And, really, I mean, it's in round figures, it's $1 million offer. And you don't get those opportunities too often in life. I mean, you've had it a couple of times. But, and the Tigers have said, look, we can't stand in his way. Off you go. And fair enough, and good, fair play to the Tigers. Yeah, so I think we've got to give them some credit here because I believe that we're within their rights to say, no, Paddy, you can't do that. So, in essence, they've done the right thing by him as an individual. But what does it mean to the Melbourne Tigers now? Because he was such a pivotal part of their program. For most of the season, he's been leading the league in field goal attempts, so he's been dominating the ball and dominating their program and getting some very good results. Sounds familiar. Look, I think it was interesting to note that even though Paddy was a pivotal part of the lineup and he was getting a lot of shots, that take the weekend's results, I guess, in isolation as an example. On Friday night, didn't have a big game, but they won and they beat Perth. On Saturday night, they go to Adelaide, Paddy has 32 and they lose. Now, Sure you're not suggesting, Grantley, they're better off without him. I'm not saying that. I wouldn't have thought so. But I guess what I'm saying is it's not the be-all and the end-all. And I think with Ubaka and Dorsey, they've got two good imports who are going to take up a fair bit of slack. And I think the other person that you'll find that will come in and have a bigger impact now is Daniel Dillon. And I don't think that as good as Paddy Mills is and as great a player that he is, I don't think the negative impact on the Tigers is going to be as big as a lot of people expect. Well, I think it is a huge blow to the Tigers and the NBL, but they do, as you rightly mentioned, have the strength and the talent to be able to cover for him to a certain extent. The interesting thing is what they can do moving ahead, because they know it's not like he's replaceable, because they don't have an import spot available, but you would expect with Ubaka and Daniel Dillon, who guided the Cairns Taipans in the backcourt to a championship appearance in the championship finals last season, that they would be more than capable of carrying the load. Look, I think there's no problem there, and I think when the Tigers sit down and nut it out, I wouldn't be surprised if they use the Mills spot on a big, because they're lacking a big. They're going with Tregar in the middle. He's really a power forward. Matty Burston's their only true centre. He's been injured and has that problem over the course of his career. I think they'll go out and try and get maybe the best possible Australian big man who is available. Well, that would, I think they need that, but if they're looking to try and replace like for like, two guys that I would think that would be on the radar is a guy like Daniel Joyce, who's been in the NBL, has gone back and done some things in the SEABL competition, and also Shane McDonald is another player for the life of me. I don't know how he's not running around in an NBL uniform. So there are some point guards out there on the sidelines that would be available, but I think you're right. I think they might actually need if they're going to replace him, get a bigger guy. Just quickly on this though, in hindsight, and we look back on it now and you look at the decision to take Paddy Mills, it did come at a cost, because it did cost the Melbourne Tigers one of their favourites and a guy that's been with the club for many, many years, since about the age of playing under 16, so a long, long time, and that is Darryl Coletto. In hindsight, in your judgment, was the right thing to do? Oh, look, I think you only judge things as they happen at the time, and I think it was the right move. Look, I think probably Darryl Coletto would say taking Paddy Mills over me is the right move. Now, just because it hasn't panned out for a whole season, so be it. But the fact of the matter is that they didn't think they were going to have Paddy for the whole season anyway, because they assumed that the NBA lockout would be resolved and he'd be back playing in Portland. So in a lot of respects,
it's no different to how they envisaged it panning out in the first place.
Yes, and what about Darren Coletto? Because he made the choice to move on to New Zealand because he was still going to be with the Tigers, still going to be training with them, and as soon as Paddy went back to the NBA, how do you think he would be feeling right now?
I actually think he'd be feeling fairly comfortable because I honestly don't think he would probably be getting the minutes with the Tigers that he's getting with the Breakers. You know, he's had 15 for the Breakers, you know, on the weekend, and I think he feels comfortable there. He enjoys it over there, and he's had a new lease of basketball life. And I don't think there'd be one moment's regret from Darren Coletto on it.
I couldn't agree with you more, Grantley. Well summed up. And let's face it, Darren Coletto, he took the game-winning shot, although he came up short on the weekend. He had the game-winning shot, so clearly the New Zealand break is putting a lot of faith in Darren Coletto. Good luck to Paddy Mills as well. I think all basketball fans appreciate the opportunity to have seen such a superstar like him running around in his in the competition here. And just as a little sidebar of this, my understanding of the Chinese League is that the regular season finishes in the middle of February. The team he's on will likely go to the playoffs, but is it possible, if the Tigers got into the playoffs, Grantley, that maybe if his season finishes over there, that we might see him back in before the end of the season?
Well, I guess the calendar kind of matches up, doesn't it? But
well, maybe.
I would say, given the amount of money that the Chinese owner has spent on his team, that they will make the playoffs. And if they don't make the playoffs, somebody could pay a very dear price.
Well, and because his teammate's going to be Kenyon Martin.
Kenyon Martin's on the roster.
The Denver Nuggets. So he's going to be in a very, very good team, you would think. Well, let's move on to other issues, and that is the Sydney Kings. We've spoken a lot about the Sydney Kings, and one of the main men in the competition is Julian Kazoo. And Grantley, you've come up with a very interesting observation about Julian Kazoo and the impact that he has on the Sydney Kings.
Well, I can't claim this one. This one is actually one that pops up from time to time on Twitter from Ben Fitz.
Yep.
And it is a good observation that when Julian Kazoo doesn't get to the free throw line, the Kings don't win. When he lives there, they win. Now, they're 3-5 this season. If we have a look at the numbers on the graphic, in the 3 wins that the Kings have had, Kazoo shoots about 12 free throws.
Yep.
And he's 10 of 12 on average in those games. When they lose, he only shoots about 6 freebies.
Yep.
And he's only about 3 of 6 from the line. So there is some correlation there that if Kazoo's not getting a lot of the ball and he's not getting the line, they don't win. But the thing I would probably look at more than that is that when they lose, the Kings only score 66.5 points a game. When they win, they're averaging 100.7.
Incredible.
I think that might be the bigger issue to look at than Kazoo's free throws, but there could be a correlation between the both as well.
There's no doubt about that, and I think that one of the things you draw from that is when he's getting plenty of touches, when he's around the basket and the teams are forced to guard him down low and commit those fouls, and he's involved in a lot of the offence, then there's no doubt that the Sydney Kings are going to be functioning a lot better when a superstar like Julian Kazoo sees a lot of the ball. So very well sniffed out by you, Grantley, and with a little help off Twitter to Ben Fitz. Grantley, another feature of round 7 was the form of the Cairns Taipans, and in particular, after you put a rocket up Andrew Warren last weekend, he has come out.
I don't know if that was me. That might have been the other bloke that was here last week.
Well, Bernard Cope might have had a little bit to do with it, but the bottom line is it got the desired result. Now, I don't know how much impact it would have had on him, but he had a sensational game, and not surprisingly, the Cairns Taipans had 2 spectacular wins.
And look, all credit to them. You know, I think a lot of people have expected that they're going to crumble, and they're not, and they hadn't. They were 2-4.
Yep.
And so people's perceptions and ideas of the Snakes was on the money, but they've come out on the weekend. They've smashed the Kings, and then they've had a really good tight home win over the Breakers, coming over the top big time in the fourth quarter. So that's massive, and I think not only Andrew Warren was a factor, but Alex Loughton.
Spot on.
Big game.
22 points, I believe.
He had 12 points in 18 minutes against the Kings, and he had 22 in 31 minutes against New Zealand. So he's a big factor, and Jamal Wilson just keeps on keeping on. He he's shaping up as probably the best new import in the league this season.
And full credit to Aaron Fern. A lot's been said about the Cairns Taipans, and I think we mentioned it last week. Most people tipped them to finish in last position. So he is being able to extract the absolute very best out of what the talent he has available, and great to see Andrew Warren bounce back after a little bit of abuse from your good self. It's now time for a section which Andrew Warren featured in quite prominently last week, and it's a section that we've come to really appreciate, and it's called Who's Hot? Who's Not? And Grantley, Andrew Warren, I think firstly you should apologise to him, but secondly, he tops my list of who's hot right now.
Is that right?
Yes.
Well, did you put that list together? Perhaps you'd like to run through it for us.
Well, Andrew Warren, in the weekend, you saw some of the averages he's able, which you've just touched on. But it's also the way in which, given where he was at, when you're down like that and you're down on confidence, and Leonard Copeland simplistically put it, just get out there and shoot the ball, or something like that, he said it. And he's done that, but he's done it in a way that wasn't to the detriment of his team.
No, look, he has. He's taken up the challenge.
Yes.
And he wasn't on his own just quietly. I think Ron Dorsey might have watched it goes off last week too. But Warren, he'd only averaged 3.7 points per game in his previous three. He's come out and he's had 21 against the Kings, he's had 21 against the Breakers. And just for a little twist here, in both games, 21 points, 4 rebounds, 1 steal, 2 turnovers. Almost, even his shooting numbers were almost identical in both games.
Wow, that says a lot for him. And I guess it goes to show once you establish your role, you get that consistency, but that is extraordinary to have that across 2 games. Well done to Andrew Warren. Another player that is doing some really good things up there in the Gold Coast Blaze, and I touched on and had some question marks about the recruitment of Andres De Leon, and he's doing some really, really sharp work, and he's continuing on his hot form. But another player that's going under the radar a little bit is Anthony Petrie. I was very impressed with the way in which he's helping out the Gold Coast Blaze.
Look, he's come back off that season-long injury that kept him out last season. And, just gradually he's been getting into it, stepping up. And I think a lot of the Gold Coast people will tell you actually how important he is to what they do. Like you said, bit under the radar, hard worker, blue collar, gets the job done. And on the weekend, he's had 16 points on 7 of 10 field goals, 9 rebounds in the win over the Crocs. So the Peach is back.
Well, I saw it firsthand, and certainly with the Peach doing his work, and with De Leon coming in, he is an explosive penetrator. He is going to be very difficult for teams to handle with the skills that he brings to the table. So they are shaping up as a real force. Another person, and we'll say this for the last time, unfortunately, this season, that was white hot was Patrick Mills against the Adelaide 36ers. Now, it did come in a loss, but Paddy Mills went out with a blaze.
32 points in what turned out to be his last game, and that pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And some of the less shining performances, these are always hard to touch on, but Grantley, you seem very comfortable with it. Let's go with some of the not so good performances. And you wanted to start off with the Kings, and in particular Aaron Bruce, who this year has shown some really good form, but on the weekend not so hot.
Look, Aaron Bruce has been quite good all season. He's had a little injury problem as well, but in such an important game for the Kings, he's come up with 2 points on 0 of 5 field goals. And for one of the most experienced players on that team, and one of the best players on that team, he's got to come with more in that game.
They do, and it seems like he really wasn't involved in the game and never got himself involved, so here's your first category. In the second one, the New Zealand Breakers, they've lost 2 in a row. Admittedly, on the one against the Taipans was a heartbreaking loss, but they've lost 2 in a row and just maybe showing some signs of vulnerability.
Well, there could be just the tiniest little crack there, but 2-game losing streak. It's the longest losing streak in the league right now.
It is.
Oh, they're on the skids, big time.
Well, that's a good sign, isn't it, for the competition that 2-game losing streak is actually the highest. The other one is the Melbourne Tigers, and although they were very good against the Perth Wildcats, defensively there is some glaring statistics that suggest that they're not quite getting it done on the defensive end.
No, they're not. They're giving up just 72.5 points per game when they win. Which
Very
shows
good, which is outstanding
good
defence.
job. But when they lose, 94 points. They're giving up 94. They go up 95 against Adelaide, which begs the question, has Trevor Gleeson had you in working on the defence?
That is a little unfair, Grantley, but I think across the board this year, before the start of last weekend, statistically they were the best, one of the best defensive teams in the competition. So you have those games from time to time, Grantley. So
they need to peg it down more consistently.
Yes. Well, we mentioned it right from the top of the program about an extraordinary performance in the 24-second shot challenge, and we go over to Adelaide, and where we get one of the renowned shooters in the competition, Darren Ning, and let's see how he does in the 24-second shot challenge.
Oh, g'day, Steve. How are you doing? Oh, geez. Hey, how are you guys? All right, we're here with none other than the doctor himself. That's right, Mr. Darren Ing. The 36ers have just finished training. We've had a pretty hard day on the floor. And we've got Darren here to take us through the 24-second shootout, and I'm sure he's going to give you a showing. How do you think you're going to go today, Darren?
Well, hopefully I do pretty well. Reputation's on the line. I saw Joey Wright shoot fairly well last time, so
I'm sure if you can't beat Joey Wright, we've got something going on. Any excuses for today? You know, I'm sure there are plenty of excuses. It was a really hard day on the floor. They've actually opened the roof here in the arena, so there's wind going everywhere. Any other excuses you want to add to it?
Yeah, the humidity's pretty high at the moment. Ball's maybe a bit slippery. As he said, it's post-training. We're pretty buggered, but I don't know. We'll give it a shot.
All right, so there you go. Expect a big score from the doctor. He's a shooting extraordinaire. Let's check it out. Darren Ing, 16 made baskets, didn't miss a shot. How do you think you went there, Darren?
Yeah, not too bad. Pretty happy with the perfect score, so we'll see if it holds up during the season.
Well, there you go. It's going to be tough to beat. Joey Wright, eat your heart out. That's a 24-second challenge here with the 36ers. Have a good one.
Well, there it is. We have a new clubhouse leader, and just the precision of an open heart surgeon was Darren Ning in a perfect 16 of 16, but there is an element of controversy about this. Firstly, that was the longest introduction in the history of the 24-second shot challenge, so Stevie Way, terrific job, but just tighten it up a little bit. And secondly, no, it goes off sign-off. Now, I would expect that given the rules of the competition, which you and I are the grand poobahs of, there's got to be a point deduction, I would have thought. Point deduction, because we didn't see any sign-off whatsoever.
No, there wasn't, but I don't know that you can penalise perfection. No. 16 of 16, I think you have to let that one stand.
Yeah, fair. Well, I'll let you have your way on this one.
And you just never know when you're going to need the good doctor to help you.
That is a very valid point. But what a spectacular performance. Bubbles Golding will just be shattered.
His bubble has been burst.
It's been burst because Chris Golding was our leader with 15, but 16 of 16. In fact, I think it's going to be very hard to beat. You'd have to shoot him real quick and not miss to beat it. So, spectacular performance by the surgeon, Darren Ning. Well done on that one. Grantley, it's now time for, well, I'm going to claim it as my favourite part of the show, the Mark Zuckerberg Minute. And that's where we get your feedback off the Twitter. I'm Andrew Gage 10, you're Grantley Bernard, or you hit the social media pages of the NBL. As it is with every week, don't forget that the best question, which is going to be decided by Grantley Bernard, wins the official NBL game ball. And this is an absolute beauty, Grantley. It comes to us via Spalding, and get out there. If you want to shoot hoops in the right manner, go get yourself a Spalding NBL game ball. Grantley, what have you got coming off the Twitter and the Facebook this week?
We've got some really good ones from Twitter and Facebook. First one up, Martin DeLang says, is too hard to guard Idris de Leon better than Gary Irvin?
Ooh, that is a big one. I think we haven't seen enough of Idris, but he's certainly in that category. He's definitely in the conversation. From what we've seen in the last 2 weeks, he's had back-to-back games of 21 points a game, and he is a pocket dynamo. He can get to the rack. He's very, very hard to defend. Gary Irvin, of course, did it over the entire season and was a very worthy winner of the league MVP. He could shoot the ball. He brought the other guys into the game. So there was a lot to Gary Irvin, but early signs are that De Leon is definitely right there.
Real deal?
He's the real deal.
Cameron Curtis, also on Facebook, asks, do you think Ian Rebillard will see out the season with the Kings?
Well, I hope so. I think Moose Rebillard is on a longer-term journey. It's always difficult when you're a start-up team, and let's face it, although the Kings are a brand that's synonymous with the NBL, they had a couple of years off. He took them back in last season. I'm not sure they quite got the balance right with their roster at the moment, and as such, that makes it difficult for the coaching staff. But I think I will say this: that Moose Rebillard, from where we saw him when he first came into the competition to where he is now, he has grown a lot as a player. They've invested a lot of time in him, and I would hope that he would see the season out, Grantley.
And finally, the winner of the NBL Sporting Game Ball for this week is Stephen Ross. I really like this question. Will Julian Kazoo be good enough by next year to make the final cut for the London Olympics?
Wow. Well, it's going to be a tough one. He's in a position that right now Australia has a depth of talent, a strong depth of talent, and he's competing against guys like Andrew Ogilvy, Nathan Jawai, these guys that we don't see a lot of, and let's not, of course, it's going to be led by Andrew Bogut in the middle. So given his form and where he's at, he's definitely going to be in contention, and it's going to come down to how he performs in the training environment. They'll have a few practice games, but he is right there in the mix. I personally would love to see it because it would really endorse the NBL and where it's at, but he's got to get there on his own merits, and I think that he's in the mix.
I agree.
I don't think you can say he's definitely in. Unfortunately, I cannot say right now that he's
and he
definitely
may
in.
have to maybe learn to play a bit more 4 than 5 internationally.
Yeah, that's right. And we wish him well, and I think that it's great that he's back here, playing in the competition, because he's another one that would be a hot commodity in many countries throughout the world. So, and he's doing some great things. Runner-up in the MVP voting last season, so great to see him earn his way into the Boomers lineup and become an Olympian. It'd be fantastic. Good time to do that. Terrific work, and the winner of that one, Grantley, was Stephen Ross.
Correct.
So, Stephen, we'll be in touch, and you've got an NBL game ball coming your way. A lot of questions off the Twitter and the NBL about Paddy Mills, but we've touched on him throughout the show. So yeah, and as we said, we have touched on.
I think we've had our hands all over him.
We have had a good smothering of Paddy Mills throughout the show. So hopefully in that we've answered many of the questions that came off the Twitter and the NBL Facebook page. Grantley, we say it week in, week out, and we saw it last weekend in round 7, but round 8 shaping up to be a very, very pivotal round, and it's important that you let all the people out there know where the big games are going to be played, and even more importantly, they want to hear who you think is going to be the winners and the losers.
Well, it starts Thursday night in Auckland with the Breakers against the Townsville Crocs. The Breakers should get that one at home. On Friday, it's the Melbourne Tigers against the Sydney Kings in yet another capital city clash. The Tigers should come back from that loss to Adelaide and get the biscuits at home over the Kings. On Saturday, it's the 36ers against the Gold Coast Blaze. This is a massive game for both teams, but I like Gold Coast to get over the top of the Sixers at home. And finally on Sunday, the Perth Wildcats at home to the Sydney Kings. I cannot see the Wildcats losing that one.
I think you've got them right there, Grantley. I'd agree with you and your predictions on that one. But it's somewhat of a sad week with the loss of Paddy Mills, but still plenty going on in the NBL, so make sure you get out there and support your team. That's all we have time for this week. Again, Grantley Burnett just keeps on keeping on. Just a sensational performance by you, and so well done on that. And we also must pay homage to our supporters, and it all starts with the naming rights sponsor of the NBL, iNet. Connect better.
1
and 1.
Centrebet.
Sporting.
Rent Smart.
Virgin Australia. Doing some wonderful work out there. Thanks to all those partners in the NBL. Terrific round of games coming up. We look forward to catching up with you next week on the world's most popular NBL podcast, and it's called It Goes Off.